Hey guys, how you doing? I'm doing okay. Well, my friends, we're in the final installment of this little video series, um, and I'm going to move a little quicker. I explained a lot of the picture that I see on how the political violence parallels domestic violent progression. So let's put it to application, okay? And I hope you see what I see, and I will show you what I see when it comes to language and action from that language. So just keep in mind, okay, this is what I see with the kind of political violence that Democrats and liberals are uh, screaming and um, um, vocalizing. Okay, so here we go.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind, and you will pay the price. You won't know what hit you.
Next up. Are you threatening me?
Okay, now I'm going to break apart something that Maxine Waters says. Okay, so you see how what Schumer said could sound like a threat. Okay, now these aren't suggestions, these are instructions, these are directives. What you're going to hear Maxine Waters tells the crowd are not suggestions, they are instructions, they are directives.
And if you see anybody from that cabinet in a restaurant, in a department store, at a gasoline station, you get out and you create a crowd.
You grow up, you get up, and you form a crowd. Isn't that what domestic violent men do to the women in their lives? They stand up and form a crowd of one and block the woman from leaving the house or going into another room.
And you push back on them.
You push back on them. What if they don't push you? What if, okay, so I guess you get in their face, they feel threatened by your aggressive, violent stance, and she feels threatened, and you get in her face, you stand in her way, you're a crowd of one. What does the victim do? Sometimes the victim will retreat, but sometimes the domestic batterer's victim does try to push past her abuser. In that regard, Maxine Waters is instructing the crowd to behave like a domestic violent person, to shove back when they show independence. Shove back. They want to get past you. but you shove back. She's telling them it's a directive. You shove back when you become aggressive and violent and they try to defend themselves, or she tries to defend herself, or she tries to get away from you. You must shove them back. You must push back. So these are directives, instructions. How to be a domestic batterer 101. Follow these instructions and you will be a successful domestic batterer. Basically, I see no difference.
And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
The Congresswoman
Okay. Then
is
comes...
pushing more division in a nation already seemingly divided. Protesters yelling shame at DHS Secretary Kirstjen Nielsen at a Mexican restaurant.
Now, living with a domestic abusive spouse, as was my ex-wife, I learned you remove yourself from possible or potential conflict. I was dating a woman once whose son basically told me to get in somebody's face if they insult me. Hold your ground, stand your ground, and stand your space, or else you'll be walked all over. And I said, no, that's not the way to do it. You remove yourself from potential conflict. You, even if you are the first one to go to that bar and you see potential conflict growing, you remove yourself from that situation. That could be potential conflict. And the son said to me, that's a coward's way. That's a coward, then you'll be known as a coward. I said, no. Because you are assuming control of your situation. If you see potential conflict, for example, if you're approaching an intersection and you're in the right of way, and somebody runs that red light, you have a responsibility to avoid a conflict. Even though you have the right of way in that intersection, and that person who may have hit you or might hit you does not have the right of way, you still avoid the conflict by stopping, even though you have the right of way. That person was wrong, but you're wrong if you know that person's wrong and you keep yourself out of a conflict. Although the son of the woman I dated says I'm a coward, I don't think so. I know so. I know so. You avoid conflict by removing yourself from that conflict. He thinks that's being a coward. It's not. It's being smart. Because otherwise, you would be stepping down to that other person's level. So in this scene where Ted Cruz is intimidated by strangers, he could have done one of two things. One, he could have called the cops if he had a cell phone on him. Two, if he sees that the crowd is forming, if he goes in one direction, he stops and reverses course and goes in a different direction. But he believed at the moment that he has the right, and he's going to exercise that right and push through the crowd that's pushing back. If I were Ted Cruz, I would have either stayed at my table and called the police, or see that where the crowd is coming from and go a different direction. But he did not. But so these people are following the instructions of Maxine Waters. Engage in conflict. Assume a domestic batterer's position. Get in their face. Block their path. Control them. Intimidate by being a crowd of many. And if you're a domestic batterer engaging in this same maneuver, you would be a crowd of one. And there have been many instances where a domestic batterer is a crowd of one against his victim, the woman whom he claims to love.
We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! Beto is way harder than you do! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors! God bless you! Let my wife through. We believe survivors! For God, we believe survivors! 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 Texas preachers, we believe survivors! We believe survivors! We believe survivors!
So now we have seen intimidation and threats. And then, while no physicality has been reached yet, now you go from verbal threats and intimidation and crowd of one, or forming a crowd against your victim. And then comes the next step.
ASU police say they are investigating a video making the rounds on social media showing a man yelling at a group of Trump supporters about slashing Republicans' throats. Student groups set up here all the time. Voter registration, say no to animal testing, and political groups like Students for Trump.
We were just tabling like every other Wednesday, and this man that you see in a video, he comes up to us out of nowhere, no words spoken, nothing exchanged with him.
Slash his throat!
Okay. Now, since I did that last video, I thought of something else. Here we have an unstable person. Should be in the FBI radar. A possible mass shooter. And threats of mass murder. So I heard there slash his throat. He could be talking, if he's gay, he could be talking about his ex-lover. If his ex-lover decides to end the relationship, and there have been many, many cases where someone breaks up with someone who is unstable, fears for his life, and they say, if I can't have you, then nobody can. So it could be his ex-lover's throat that he could be talking about. You left me for somebody else. No one can have you but me. So, we don't know who he attempts to murder, but we don't know anything about this person. He could be hearing voices in his head. He's definitely unstable. We know that. We know that he is not rational. He's unstable. And for him to be screaming and screaming and screaming, how do we know that he's not hearing voices in his head? Pounding away at him, screaming at him, screaming at him. I think there's enough documentation to suggest that many people who do hear voices in their heads, the voices that they hear are loud and insistent. So he ends up screaming to out-scream the voices. So we don't know if a voice in his head is screaming at him, that he lashes out verbally so that his voice is heard over the loud voice that he hears in his head. We don't know. All we can do is speculate. But what we do know, this is not normal behavior. This is very alarming behavior. Slash his throat, then you, my friend, must be placed under intense scrutiny and then do research on all the people in your life to make sure their lives are not in danger.
Osama Alani was manning the table. He's the president of the group. He says no one in the group knows who this is, but he was angry, and not just yelling, screaming.
Say that one more time.
Okay. What does he call Republican? Who does he call Republican? What mass murder is he intending to satisfy whatever it is that is calling out to him or annoying him to want to take such measure? We don't know what goes on in this person's head. Who does he call Republican? Tragically, the Republicans in his mind, in his warped, distorted mind, could be this.
We refused to believe it was a shooting until it just kept going and going. And then Chase and Aldine left the stage, and then everybody started fleeing. And we started fleeing. We had to hop the gate to get out.
fireworks, something that you think normally happens in Vegas, and then it just started going pop, 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 pop.
Boom, 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 boom. And they kept going, even after we lost, it just kept going and going. It was insane.
Through investigation and response, we determined there was a shooter on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay. Officers responded to that location and engaged the suspect at that location. He is dead. Now our suspect was identified as Stephen Craig Paddock, 64 years old, a white male from Mesquite, Nevada. We have no investigative information or background associated with this individual that is derogatory. The only thing we can tell is he received a citation several years ago. We believe the individual killed himself prior to our entry.
Fascist throats? Who are the fascists in his mind? Slashed fascist throats. So in his mind, he somehow identifies a certain group as fascists. Well, we've shown what potentially could be what he meant by Republican throats, by that terrible tragedy in Vegas. So in his mind, who could be the fascists? We don't know. All we can do is speculate. It's possible in his mind, in his warped, distorted mind, fascists could be these people. And I'm saying these people, or I should say this group of people that you will see. Who knows what the voices in this man's head is identifying as fascists? This is possibly what that voice is telling him.
We are dedicating our entire show tonight to the wrenching new body cam video from the officers who responded to the massacre at the Pulse nightclub in Orlando. It was nearly a year ago that America witnessed its deadliest mass shooting, and tonight you will watch as those officers storm into that club not knowing what they would find on the other side. Here's ABC's Chief Investigative Correspondent, Brian Ross.
Keep your hands up. Come on, this way. This way.
Let's go. Just go. Just go.
The 11 hours of new videos made public today show the chaos and carnage of that horrible night.
I see shadows moving here.
As police first responders try to save the wounded and hunt down the killer. Next week marks 1 year since the attack, and the images come as memories and emotions in Orlando are still raw.
To look in their eyes and see that they had seen something they had never ever seen before.
That weekend would begin in tragedy on Friday night and would only get worse.
Emergency 911, this is Joe on a recorded line.
Somebody just open fire now. I'm surprised alive.
Our officers responded to a nightclub shooting where Christina Grimmie was shot and killed.
24 hours later, another killer was waiting, driving to Orlando from his home 2 hours away, heading into the city on Interstate 4, heavily armed. The target, the Pulse nightclub, a popular spot in the city's gay community. Inside, it was Latin night.
Our regulars were out, having a good time.
We were all in a great mood. We were in the club dancing.
1 or 2 minutes after alcohol was done, all of a sudden there was a shot.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired!
An off-duty police detective working security at Pulse, Adam Gruler, radioed in.
Shots fired! 1912, South Orange Avenue. Shots fired. Multiple down.
Signal 43 on Patrol East.
What does that mean?
Emergency assistance. We need you 5 minutes ago.
Less than 90 seconds after the signal 43 goes out, backup units begin to arrive.
Everybody, whoa! Hey, over here!
Including one officer from the bicycle patrol downtown, Graham Cage.
I heard the emergency call
and I just jumped on my bike and was quick as possible.
This newly released video comes from the body cam worn by Officer Cage as he arrived at the nightclub.
That's where they are. I see shadows moving in here.
You ran in there where there's an active shooter. You didn't have heavy body armor, did you?
What you see I'm wearing right now, just a light vest, and that's it.
What do you know?
Anything else she's whispering? Police emergency, Natasha, your cause reported. Okay, tell me did you see the shooter inside of the club?
No, but they're talking.
What are they saying? Can you make out the words?
No, but they're gonna kill us.
Right when we were about to go in, we're still hearing shots.
It opens up behind the fence. It opens up.
Hey, show me your head.
Show us your hand.
Is there anybody else in here?
Show us your hand.
I got his hands. Come out.
All right, come on. You're a policeman.
Come on. Hurry up. Hey, we're coming out. Hands up. Tell them hands up.
Hands up. We got one coming out. What are we doing now?
Getting more.
Okay.
Just trying to get him out.
The bullets missed Jackie severe, but hit the two friends she was standing with, one mortally.
He had a gunshot wound to his chest. That's when I saw that he was injured. He was non-responsive.
Bodies dead and wounded everywhere. Those images were blacked out by police, as required by Florida law.
Those first few officers that get there need to go to that scene, go to the building, and get in and engage that shooter.
Chase after the shooter.
That's correct.
Police training calls for officers to head straight to the active shooter, even if it means going past the victim.
A person reached up and asked for help. But at that point, we didn't know where the shooter was, if he was detained, if he was deceased, or what was going on. So, as much as I wanted to help him, I could not help him until we knew for sure.
You had to walk away from the victim?
Yes.
This is going to be astronomical moment.
We continued down the southeast side, stepping over bodies, and then as I look to my right, I see two of our officers start shooting down the hallway.
Suspect barricaded inside with multiple hostages. There are multiple people now shot inside behind the bar.
They saw him, they saw a threat, and they engaged that threat.
And then what happened to the shooter?
He holed up inside a bathroom inside the business.
Now the Orlando SWAT team is in place, led by Major Mark Canty.
This kind of went very quickly from an active shooter to what we call a barricaded gunman, to a hostage situation.
So did you decide just to go in and get him?
No.
It was a decision that would later be criticized by some, as it would take 3 hours for police to gain full control and get all the wounded back to safety.
Let's go!
Chief John Mina, in the command post that night, says it was the right call.
We were in there saving people from the dance floor, from dressing rooms, from the other bathroom. In fact, we took 22 people out of the front bathroom. Once we were inside that club, there were no more gunshots until the final assault.
But the shooter was still inside, cornered and dangerous.
Emergency 911, this is Dr. Lawrence being recorded. What?
I want to let you know I'm in Orlando, and I did the shooting.
A half hour after he first opened fire, the shooter called into the Orlando Police Department Dispatch Center.
Okay. What's your name?
I pledge my allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi Hafidullah on behalf of the Islamic State.
She asked him to repeat what he was saying.
What's your name?
I pledge my allegiance to Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi Hafidullah on behalf of the Islamic State.
The dispatcher said, you need to hear this call.
Sergeant Andy Brennan, a trained hostage negotiator, was working an off-duty detail at a bar downtown that night when he responded to the Signal 43 call at Pulse and headed to the dispatch center.
So I went, and sure enough, 5 minutes later, this shooter calls in.
Where are you at?
In Orlando.
Where in Orlando?
The shooter hung up, as he would again and again that night.
Chilling. I said, let's call, and so we made our first call immediately from that dispatcher's station.
Hello there. Hi there, this is Orlando Police. Who am I speaking with, please?
You're speaking with the person who pledged his allegiance to the Islamic State, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi Hafidullah.
We wanted to confirm that we had, in fact, the person that was inside. and you can start to hear the serious tone in his voice.
For the next 55 minutes, Brennan will engage the shooter on the phone, listening to his rants about ISIS and Syria.
You need to stop the U.S. airstrikes. You have to tell the U.S. government to stop bombing.
I understand that, but here's why I'm here right now. I'm with the Orlando Police. Can you tell me what you know about what's going on tonight?
What's going on is that I feel the pain of the people getting killed in Syria and Iraq.
Okay. So, have you done something about that?
Yes, I have.
Tell me what you did, please.
No, you already know what I did.
At the scene, officers are using the time to get as many victims out as possible.
We're trying to get people who are breathing out of here.
One big concern, the shooter might try to hide among the victims.
Places that you would think only 2 people could hide, we were finding 10 people.
Officer James Hyland arrived in his personal pickup truck, which was quickly turned into a makeshift ambulance by his partner.
We didn't have any ambulances or anything there. He just started loading people up, and he just jumped in the truck, and I left it unlocked, and he was just going back and forth, doing one run after another, after another, after another.
But others could not be reached, and they used their phones to call loved ones, who then called 911 and pleaded for help.
My girlfriend's in the bathroom. There are now 4 dead in the bathroom and 2 shot. They're bleeding out. If somebody doesn't get there soon, they're gonna die.
Yes, my son was shot in the club in the Pulse in Orlando, and he's still in the bathroom when he's bleeding. He got shot, and nobody's going in for him.
By tracing the phone number, negotiator Brennan had finally learned the shooter's name, Omar Mateen, a 29-year-old American-born son of Afghan immigrants, an angry and troubled man with a history of violence and failure.
Hello, Omar. This is Andy from Orlando Police.
At some point, you start to call him Omar. Yes, if you introduce a level of familiarity, and there's less opportunity that this person is going to be depersonalized.
But then the negotiator hears words from Mateen that quickly change the dynamic for everyone inside the nightclub.
By the way, there's some vehicles outside that have some bombs, just to let you know. Your people are going to get it, and I'm going to ignite it if they try to do anything.
Okay, I understand that, and I'll pass that along. Can you tell me what vehicle? Because I don't want to see anybody get hurt.
No. But I'll tell you this. It can take out a whole city block almost.
A frantic search begins outside the club with the shooter's car, and once more, the threat escalates.
I have a vest.
Okay, you have a vest.
Hey.
I understand that. Okay, and so what kind of vest are you talking about? Is it a bullet-resistant vest? Is it a bomb vest?
No. It's what they use in France.
It's what they use in France.
Alright, I gotta go.
Guys, we're getting a report of that somebody in one of the bathrooms may have an explosive device strapped to him. Just so you guys know, in the building, you may not want to stay there.
But not a single officer pulled back to safety.
You're in it to win it. You weren't going to leave? No.
Now, the police prepare to move in.
Go ahead.
When we return.
Keep coming. Bro.
Man that you see in a video, he comes up to us out of nowhere, no words spoken, nothing exchanged with him.
Osama Alani was manning the table. He's the president of the group. He says no one in the group knows who this is, but he was angry, and not just yelling, screaming.
Say that one more time.
We have now seen what threats, verbal threats of an unstable mind can produce. And yet, those are potential. What? Those mass shootings were potential. They could, God forbid, be the result of that kind of screaming, of that instability of that individual, sick, warped, distorted mind. So, what's next? We've seen intimidation in domestic battery and domestic violence. We've seen intimidation, threats, shoving, invading a person's personal space, blocking their way, and then we have this.
Fucking own, bitch!
You know what comes next. In practically all domestic violence cases, and for those who threaten other people's lives.
What's going on? Where is this guy?
Do we know where he's at? Do we know where he's at?
He's behind home plate. You call 911?
I assume people have been calling 911 already. Hey, is that guy okay out there? Is that guy been shot? Is he okay? Is anybody talking to him?
Yeah, he's behind the bunker. We have shot fire. Shot fire. Right now. Stay down! Stay down! Stay down!
And this all started after the shooter asked somebody, are there Republicans and playing and where they are. Slash Republicans' throats. That's all part of domestic violence. These are all telltale signs. There's more to this video, but I think what I've shown you already is enough. Let's stop it with the violence. Let's stop it with the threats. Let's stop it with the death threats. All it leads to are tragedies. I hope with this video I can make a difference. And that's my entire intent with this video. Domestic violence, political violence, they're one and the same. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening in. Let's treat each other better. It's so terrible how one American can treat a fellow American this badly. That is sad, it is tragic. Do you want to assassinate your brother, your sister, your nephew, your cousin? That's what you're doing when you engage in family shootings like this. Because we're all one family. We're all one American family.